Tonight, disaster has struck the Philippines. A powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake has rocked the island of Mindanao, sending shockwaves of fear and uncertainty through the region. The ground shook violently, plunging entire communities into chaos and darkness as buildings trembled and the earth rumbled beneath their feet. Buildings have collapsed, power lines are down, and communication is nearly impossible in the hardest hit areas, leaving many cut off from help and information. The full extent of the devastation is still unknown, as emergency crews struggle to reach those trapped in the darkness and debris. The quake struck just after nightfall, catching families off guard as they prepared for bed, forcing them to flee their homes in panic and confusion. What began as a faint tremor quickly escalated into a violent, relentless shaking that seemed to last forever, toppling furniture and shattering windows. People fled into debris-filled streets, desperate to escape collapsing structures, their faces etched with fear as aftershocks continued to rattle the city. But the danger didn't end there. A tsunami alert was issued for coastal areas, sending waves of panic through seaside communities. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center warned of hazardous waves within 300 kilometers of the epicenter, urging everyone near the coast to evacuate immediately. Sirens wailed across cities like Davao and Surigao, their urgent calls echoing through the night, urging coastal residents to flee to higher ground without delay. Social media is flooded with desperate pleas for help, but connectivity is spotty, making it difficult for families to reach loved ones or call for rescue. Tonight, Mindanao faces a long, terrifying night as disaster unfolds, with thousands waiting anxiously in the darkness, hoping for news, rescue, and the dawn. PHIVOLCS has officially confirmed the earthquake's magnitude at a staggering 7.4, making it one of the most powerful quakes to strike the region in recent years. The seismic waves were recorded across multiple monitoring stations, with instruments capturing the sudden, violent spike as the earth shifted beneath the sea. The epicenter was located offshore, about 85 kilometers east of General Surigao del Sur, deep in the Philippine Sea. This remote location, just off the coast, meant that coastal communities were among the first to feel the tremors. The quake was triggered by a tectonic rupture along the Philippine Trench, a notorious and active fault line that runs parallel to the eastern coast of Mindanao. This trench is known for generating some of the most significant seismic events in the country's history. What made this earthquake especially destructive was its shallow depth, just 25 kilometers below the seabed. Shallow earthquakes like this one release their energy closer to the surface, amplifying their impact. As a result, the brutal force of the quake was delivered directly to the surface, causing intense shaking and widespread damage to buildings, roads, and infrastructure across the region. Violent ground motion was felt not only across Mindanao, but also reached parts of the Visayas, startling residents and sending people rushing outdoors for safety. The shallow depth also significantly increases the risk of a tsunami, prompting authorities to issue urgent warnings and begin evacuations along vulnerable coastlines. Aftershocks are now a major concern, with several already exceeding magnitude 5.0. These secondary quakes can further destabilize already weakened structures and trigger additional landslides or damage. Each aftershock brings new terror and further risks to buildings that have already been compromised, forcing emergency workers to remain on high alert. Many residents are now forced to remain outdoors, unable to return home due to the ongoing threat of aftershocks and the risk of collapse, spending nights in makeshift shelters or evacuation centers. The Philippines sits on the volatile Pacific Ring of Fire, a region notorious for frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Yet even here, a quake of this magnitude is considered rare and alarming. Scientific data confirms that this was a violent and extraordinary event, with the power to reshape landscapes and disrupt countless lives in an instant. The danger is far from over as communities brace for more aftershocks and the long road to recovery ahead. The tsunami warning was issued within minutes, piercing the night with urgency. Sirens blared and emergency alerts flashed across screens, jolting communities awake. PHIVOLCS and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center quickly warned of destructive waves threatening Mindanao's vulnerable eastern coast, as scientists worked around the clock to track the unfolding danger. Surigao del Sur and Davao Oriental were at the highest risk. Evacuations began immediately, with families grabbing what they could and heading for safety. A 7.4 magnitude quake at shallow depth can violently displace the seafloor, unleashing massive waves that travel at jetliner speeds toward the shore. Models predicted waves of 1 to 3 meters, enough to inundate entire coastal communities, submerge homes, and sweep away everything in their path. Local officials, police, and military went door to door, braving the darkness and chaos, urging people to flee to higher ground before it was too late. Many abandoned their homes in darkness, navigating damaged roads and debris-strewn paths, guided only by flashlights and the hope of survival. The tsunami threat extended far beyond the Philippines. Indonesia, Palau, and even Japan were put on high alert, as the Pacific braced for the worst. International cooperation became crucial as the danger rippled across the Western Pacific, with emergency teams sharing data and coordinating responses in real time. The focus remained on Mindanao, where shelters filled quickly and tension ran high, but the entire region braced for impact, united in uncertainty. The earthquake's reach was vast, its consequences far-reaching, leaving a trail of destruction that stretched for miles along the battered coastline. For many, it was a desperate race against time and the relentless sea, as every second counted in the struggle to survive. The world watched in real time as Mindanao faced a dual disaster, earthquake and tsunami, its fate hanging in the balance as the waves approached. Panic erupted as tsunami sirens blared along the coast. Families fled their homes, clutching children and essentials, as roads jammed with traffic and many ran on foot. Power outages left towns in darkness, lit only by headlights and flashlights. Communication blackouts fueled confusion and fear. People couldn't reach loved ones. Local officials struggled to direct the chaotic exodus to higher ground. In Lingig, residents saw the sea pull back, a classic tsunami warning, triggering a new wave of terror. Thousands gathered on hillsides, exposed to aftershocks and the elements. Evacuation centers quickly overflowed, lacking food, water, and medical supplies. Conditions were cramped and unsanitary. The immediate tsunami threat may have passed, but a new ordeal began for the displaced. For many, survival meant enduring a night of uncertainty and fear. At sunrise, the true scale of destruction became clear. Towns across eastern Mindanao lay in ruins. Buildings collapsed, roads fractured, bridges down. Hinatuan's municipal hall partially collapsed. The local hospital was evacuated due to damage. In Bislig, multi-story buildings crumbled, cars crushed beneath debris. Rural villages of wood and bamboo were flattened, fishing boats destroyed. The quake wiped out homes and livelihoods, especially in vulnerable communities. Assessing the damage is a monumental task. Many areas remain cut off. Aerial surveillance is now critical to guide rescue and relief. What we see now is only the beginning. The full picture is likely far worse. Mindanao faces a long road to recovery. This earthquake struck Mindanao at its most vulnerable. Just last month, a typhoon brought catastrophic flooding. Many were still in temporary shelters. Now, those shelters are gone, and families are displaced again. Local resources were already stretched thin from the previous disaster. Relief supplies are depleted, and personnel exhausted. The region now faces a double crisis: earthquake and flood recovery at once. The psychological toll is immense. Fear and hopelessness grip communities. The cycle of disaster and recovery seems endless. Agriculture, Mindanao's backbone, was devastated by floods and now by quake-damaged infrastructure. Food security and livelihoods are at risk for millions. Recovery will take years, pushing more families into poverty. The resilience of Mindanao is being tested like never before. The government has declared a state of calamity in the affected provinces. This unlocks emergency funds and allows price controls on basic goods. President Marcos has ordered all agencies to mobilize for immediate aid. The military is on high alert, preparing to deploy assets to Mindanao. The DSWD is leading relief efforts, sending food, water, and shelter kits. C-130 planes are airlifting supplies to the nearest functioning airports. The Department of Health is dispatching medical teams and supplies ready to set up field hospitals. Preventing disease outbreaks in crowded evacuation centers is a top priority. The NDRRMC coordinates all agencies and NGOs, holding emergency meetings around the clock. The logistical challenge is immense, but a whole-of-government approach is underway. The goal? Get help to those who need it, fast. As night falls again, uncertainty and fear grip Mindanao. Hundreds of thousands are displaced, sleeping in makeshift shelters or outdoors. Aftershocks keep everyone on edge. Sleep is impossible. Communication is still down in many areas. Families wait anxiously for news. The silence from remote villages is agonizing. Clean water is scarce, food supplies are dwindling, and medical care is limited. Security is a concern, with increased patrols to prevent looting. The humanitarian crisis is growing by the hour. International aid groups are on standby, awaiting a formal request for help. The next 24 to 48 hours are critical for search, rescue, and aid delivery. For Mindanao, it's a fight for survival and hope. The world is watching. The focus now is on search and rescue. Military, fire, and volunteer teams are deployed to collapsed buildings, equipped with search dogs and life-detecting gear. Every hour counts. Survival chances drop quickly. Damaged roads and bridges make reaching victims difficult. Heavy equipment is scarce. Rescuers often work by hand, risking aftershocks. The casualty count is expected to rise as more areas are reached. Authorities prioritize rescue over counting the dead. Every survivor pulled from the rubble is a victory. Our teams are on the ground, committed to bringing updates. The focus remains on rescue, aid, and stories of resilience. The world hopes for Mindanao's safety and recovery.